Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts. And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In Talk Radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. Today we're honored to have as a returning guest the Executive Director for the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, Daniel McAdams. Daniel, welcome to Liberty Talk Radio.
Thanks for having me back, Joe. Good to be back with you.
Well, Daniel, I don't see his face. There you are. You disappeared for a second. There you go. Well, Daniel, maybe you could help me with my utter frustration that it seems to be building up as we go through the year. I had at least anticipated some things to get better. Now, maybe some things are better, and they take time to funnel through the system, and we'll start seeing some savings or some wasteful spending going down the tubes and whatever, but it just doesn't seem that we're making much progress. We had a president, a person that was elected president because he was a populist, meaning he said things that people like to hear, all right? But what people like to hear and what is feasible and actually helpful may be two different things. It seems like anytime you turn on the television set, you listen to the news, all they talk about is the wars around the world and how we have to be more aggressive with other countries that are not in a line with us, and how we need to do this and that. And what happened to the proposition of worrying about our own country and leaving everyone else alone? Like I said, my mother used to say, you know, if we only stay home and mind our own business, the world would be a better place. Whatever happened to that?
Well, that's the message that Trump was elected on. You know, I mean, there was a fascinating study. I don't know if you saw it, but Reason Magazine had a piece on it, and Justin Raimondo on antiwar.com wrote about it a couple of days ago. But they did some really deep analysis of voting behavior in the places where Trump won by a hair. And this is places like Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, et cetera. What they discovered is that that thin margin of victory was in areas where there was a disproportionate number of people who had gone into the military and had been fighting the wars that under the previous presidents. So interestingly enough, extrapolating down, these are sort of pro-America. They're not sort of leftist hippie types, but they are tired of this aggressive foreign policy. These are the people that provided Trump with the margin of victory, and it looks like these are the people that he's turning his back on now that he's president.
Yeah, and whenever you listen to the news, you don't hear about what's happening here domestically. Look at Illinois. When that state finally hits the total skids, there are going to be riots in the street throughout the entire state. People with pensions are going to get only a small portion. I mean, talk about the straw that breaks the camel's back. That can be one of the states that are now going absolutely defunct, and yet we're taking billions of dollars and sending it overseas to cause more problems or to prop up other dictators that have caused the problems in the first place. I guess I'm losing my mind, but you've got to help me out with this.
Well, maybe that's why Trump is sending in some more armed federal agents into Chicago to confiscate guns. Maybe he's worried about the breakdown that'll happen when the gravy train of free stuff runs out, which is coming pretty soon. It is on our website today. Our colleague, senior fellow Adam Dick, has a piece on what's really behind this 20 new agents going into Chicago, and it really is about gun confiscation.
Oh my God.
And he makes a good point that really to the extent that the feds are coming in and helping states enforce gun laws that are more restrictive than federal gun laws and regulations, the feds are really out of line. But that's what we have, and I think this is the camel's nose under the tent.
Yeah. What I don't understand is that he was elected because he was not an insider in Washington. He was independent. He was a businessman. He understood the profit and loss statement. He understood that you have a source and disposition of funds, all this stuff that, when he's in office, he's going to look at the United States as a company, and run it like a company. And that's it. Really, we are. We're sort of like a company, and you should treat everything as you are a product and service. You have to provide something of value to everyone, or you leave them alone. And yet, he seems to have turned his back on the entire entrepreneurial spirit that put him in office in the first place, and now he's a big war hawk and wants to be he wants to become a superstar on the international stage. Am I reading that incorrectly, or am I missing something?
And it's funny, Joe. We were talking before it started, and what you said. The response to most of America would be, "Well, you just hate Trump," because I get the same thing. It's no, I don't hate Trump. I just want him to do the stuff that got him elected.
Right.
He talked about we're not going to go into regime change. We're not going to go starting new wars. We're not going to be wasting all this money overseas. We're going to take care of some of these tax problems back home. All of these things that he said that were attractive, where have they gone? What's happening? He's now in Germany. Well, he's in Poland today, rattling the sabers against Russia, and he got elected by saying, "What's so bad about getting along with Russia?" So it's almost like he's a one-man psychological operation against the rest of us, just giving us whiplash. What is he going to say one day to the next? Maybe he just didn't see going in what kind of job this is going to be. Running the government is not like running a business. I take your point that we should at least think of it in terms of fiduciary responsibilities like it is a business.
Right.
But it really is two different things. And, our good friend Bob Wenzel did a piece a while ago about the difference between authority and power. And when you run a business, you have authority over the people that work under you. But when you're in government, you have power. But if you don't know how to wield power properly, then you'll never get anything done. I think that's where he's stuck right now. He has no idea how to wield government power. These are people you can't just say, "Hey, you go do that," and they'll do it. They won't do it. It's a whole different world for him.
Yeah, well, I always thought that, when they said that he's going to run the country like a business, I was screaming, saying, no, you don't want to do that, because if I own a business and I'm making shoes, and Monday morning I wake up and I go, I don't want to make shoes anymore. I think I want to make shirts. I'll go to the company and say, we're throwing all the shoes out. We're going to make shirts. It's my decision. I own the company. But when you run a country, it's the exact opposite. You are working for the people. And although good businessmen really work for their employees, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a dictatorial person. I own companies, and I tell you, the more I leave people alone, the better they get, and the more profitable the company is. They don't need me at all, believe me. But it's, in fact, we were so wrong when we said he's going to run this country like a business, when we should have been saying the exact opposite. We don't want him to run the government like a business, because that's the way they've been doing it all along. We want the people to run the business, to run the company, basically, or the country in this case, and for him to make sure that no one gets in our way. Am I too off base there?
Well, the worst part of it is if in your business you decide to start making shirts instead of shoes, and everyone said, "Hey, wait a minute, we like your shoes," then you pay the price. You go bankrupt. You're out of business. Right. If the federal government does the same thing, they just go over to the Fed and say, "Hey, we need some more money. We probably shouldn't have done that." Yeah. And so we're on the hook for everything, no matter what they do.
Yeah. Well, I don't see right now our way out of bankruptcy, because we are increasing our allocations of whatever resources we have left in the military. We are expanding the military all over the globe. And, if you study history, every single major country, empire, if you will, or major country, everyone got sunk because of military spending. There's no exception. If you go back to the Phoenicians, it's the same story over and over again. Why do we think we're any damn better?
Yeah, it's amazing the bubble that Washington exists in. It's the military-industrial complex. Well, they fund the think tanks. The think tanks come up with very scholarly papers telling us how we need to confront North Korea and this and that and the other. And then you get more weapons sales, and then you get more money to the military-industrial complex, more money to the think tanks, and on and on. And meanwhile, you go around to places like where we live, Oklahoma, Texas, what have you. There are some rich folks, but by and large, people are just trying to get by. You go into Northern Virginia and you look at the way people live, and it's just unbelievable. These people are living so high on the hog, and it's off the backs of the rest of us while they're waving the flag and telling Middle America, hey, if you don't keep sending us all this money to keep us living rich, you're not patriotic. And it's worked so far. I don't know how much longer it will.
Yeah, well, it seems that history's repeated itself several times over. We're following the same playbook. We don't expect a different outcome. It's just a matter of when. And I've come to the conclusion that the people in Washington very well know this, and they're grabbing everything they can before the whole system, whatever, collapses, whatever happens to it, the monetary system collapses, but they're going to be, they're pre-planning. They have it all set. They're going to make a fortune either way, and everybody else is going to suffer. And then we're going to need somebody even with a more stringent, narrow-minded view of America, less constitutional, so that he can fix it for us so we don't repeat the mistake again, which, of course, will be even a triple mistake. We're in for a currency war where, I had Professor Kutlakoff from University of Boston on a few times, and he said if you count all of our debt, you're talking like $223 trillion, unfunded debt, off the balance sheet items, current debt, all this stuff, And he said, we're toast, we're gone, and yet he's dismissed, and yet he's in the top 25 economists in the world. I mean, no one's listening to him, like as a nut job or something. I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, once you got the middle class addicted to quote free stuff, I think that's when the game started to be over. But I worry about the increasing polarization, and actually polarization toward violence. You see here and there a smattering of clashes in the streets between the far left, the Antifa people, and then the far right, the alt-right types. Neither of them are attractive to libertarians, obviously, but they're fighting more, and that could provide the impetus for what you're saying. When the you-know-what hits the fan and the crackdown comes, the police are already militarized. All you need is a few more of these kinds of things, and you're talking, martial law in the future. And this is not Alex Jonesy stuff. This is like looking at what's happening right now, and it's pretty frightening.
Yeah. Well, I don't see the monetary system getting any better. It's getting worse. Just look at the debt clock. It slows down sometimes, and sometimes it reverses itself. But for the most part, it goes up. Something like $100,000, $10,000 per second. I think it is $10,000 to $12,000 per second that we go in debt. Now, a lot of seconds in a day, and so you're talking $1 billion a day, that we go into debt, to 125 billion, 30 billion a day that we go into debt. And these clowns get up there and they talk about, well, if we enact this program, which will take them 6 months to enact, we can save $471 million, in the next 10 years. And by the time he finishes the sentence, we've spent $471 million. I mean, they must know that. I mean, I guess they know. They understand that the typical American, or the majority Americans, watch the news. The news is controlled by, large corporations who have contracts with the government. It's one big ball game, and all you hear is exactly what they want to tell you, period, not the truth. And what are they going to say when there's a currency collapse? And there's going to be one if we keep on going the way we're going.
They're going to say we need to do more of the stuff we've been doing. That's what they did in 07 and 08. Let's just do more of it. the Keynesians will still be in the driving seat, I think. I don't know. I mean, Dr. Paul always talks about, when the collapse comes, we need to be ready intellectually. We need to have our program together so that we can at least put forth the ideas of freedom and liberty, whether it's on a monetary policy or in foreign policy. So, it's easy to feel fatalistic, but we really do have to keep our intellectual swords as sharp as possible.
Yeah. But you think I can keep my sanity by then? I mean, I think I'm losing it altogether. I'll be honest with you. It just drives me nuts. I mean, I never watch, I never watch mainstream media at all. Fox News is a big joke. I tell my friends, I said, look, if you have a Democrat president, you can watch Fox News. If you have a Republican president, you watch MSNBC. At least you get the other side of the coin. May not be correct, but you get the other side of the coin. You don't get the same vanilla stuff. And the only place where I can find, if I was watching television, get any news that I feel is somewhat legitimate and gives me a flavor of what's going on is if I watch RTV, Russia Television America. Do you ever watch that program? And what is your opinion of it?
To be honest, I'm like you. I don't watch the mainstream media broadcast news. And when I do go visit a friend or something and they have something on like Fox News, I'm shocked at really how bad it is. And I'm shocked at just how the basic facts are just simply wrong. I mean, we're not talking about spin or fake news or what have you, just some basic facts being absolutely incorrect. And here's an example. If you remember a few days ago, this virus, computer virus came out. Again, it reared its head again, and it was infecting hospitals, I think it was. And I watched a mainstream news report about it and how terrible it is. And we've got to ramp up the NSA and give them more power. That nowhere did it ever mention that this actual thing was a creation of the NSA. They were the ones behind creating it. So they missed that whole part of the story that tells us how the government caused the problem that it now wants to solve.
Yeah. Well, what solutions do you guys have? I mean, how are we going to get out of this malaise? We're going in the same direction we were before. The same direction we were going for before Trump only has accelerated with Trump, unfortunately. That's the way I see it. But what do I know? I'm not all that smart. Tell me, where are we going?
Well, I think we should be encouraged by the fact that more and more people are dissatisfied. I think a lot of, to the dismay probably of Dr. Paul, but a lot of Ron Paul 2012 voters were attracted by Trump's populist message, and they may not have had a real understanding of the ideology, of the philosophy behind it. But I think just the fact that people are looking for something, and that when they see a candidate who talks about less war, they are attracted to that. I think that's still a good sign. We still have, look, there was a recent Gallup poll we did a Liberty Report program on that showed 68% of Americans think this obsession about Russiagate is hurting the country. That's a positive sign. So I think the people are there, The people are there. They just need us to continue to try to do what we do, to get information out, to get alternative information out, and to do it in a responsible way.
I still have friends who say, "Oh, but Trump is going to make America great again." I mean, they're still using that slogan. I go, when is that going to wear off? I mean, why don't you look at what's going on? But of course, everything they watch or they read is very much pro-Trump, and they're just getting one very small sliver of the story. And what bothers me is that people are becoming so accustomed to us bombing other countries, because of a suspected terrorist somewhere. And then, you kill a few innocent people and children, but that's collateral damage. But, they don't really count. Have we lost our heart as a people? I mean, that we can bomb a place, a neighborhood in a foreign country because we suspect, not had proven a court of law, not convicted, suspect there's someone there who may be a terrorist, and as a result we blow up an entire neighborhood, kill many people. Then we want to know why someone from that area wants to come here and let a bomb off. They don't see the connection at all. They go, oh no, they just come here because they're terrorists. Well, what are we? They no one that I know of, I swear, it's the most amazing thing. They can't see what we are doing are terrorist activities.
Yeah, absolutely. You asked whether we've lost our heart. I would say we might have lost our soul to a degree. And it's a little bit ironic because, the president's speech in Poland today, he made many references to God, how God guides us and this and that and the other. But, as I remember, one of the things is thou shalt not kill. So, on the one hand, we're being propagandized about how moral we are and how, amazingly people we are. And on the other hand, we are going overseas and killing thousands of innocent people. I just watched a great, I don't know if you've seen it, Joe, but it's called National Bird. And it's all about the drone program in the U.S. And it's fascinating because it also goes into the moral damage that happens to the people who are the drone operators.
Right.
They're suffering from PTSD, alcohol, drug addiction, suicides at the same rate as those soldiers who are out in the field. And goes into that side and how they suffer, but it also takes a trip back to Afghanistan and interviews some of the people, some of the families actually that have been victims, wrongful victims, collateral damage. And it's a very touching film. I really recommend it.
Yeah.
I wish more Americans would see it because then they understand that those families over there are just like our families, and they have the same pain and agony when their children are killed for no reason at all.
I thought Trump was a real sharp cookie. I have come to the conclusion that he's just not as smart as I thought he was. And what bothers me most about the Trump dynasty, or what do you want to call it? The term in office is the fact that there's no philosophical ground from which he works. I mean, one decision may say, "Oh, geez, that's going the right path." The next decision takes us in the opposite direction. There seems to be no, there's no foundation from which he's working at. I mean, I may sound like a maniac, but I'm a maniac in the same way all the time on every subject. I mean, I don't waver from, at least you can say, well, this guy stands here. He's a maniac. Excuse him. Give him some medication. Maybe he'll go away. But at least I don't vary. It seems like he's all over. I never know if he had to make a decision tomorrow and I had to bet which way he would go, I would have no idea what his answer was going to be.
That's exactly the case. We wonder maybe if he doesn't just listen to the last person he talked with, and that's the policy of the moment. But just a couple of weeks ago, I think, unless I'm also going insane, that he was praising China. China's great. China's our partner. China's wonderful. Then a couple of days ago or yesterday, he had this tweet from, what a shame, China couldn't solve North Korea. Got to do it ourselves. Where China's bad. China's awful. And it's just, I wonder, on our program we did the other day, maybe this is why he's having such a heck of a time filling all these upper mid-level political appointeeships in the Pentagon and the State Department. Maybe people just don't want to work for a person who's so unhinged when it comes to policy.
Yeah. Well, just the other day I was channel surfing. I wanted to see what was happening in the stock market. I stopped at NBC, and they had Larry. I think it was Larry Kudlow. I'm not sure. I think it was him, and he was railing about, all the problems around the world. And he says, we have to solve the situation in Korea. We have to, make sure that's put to bed and, make sure North Korea knows exactly where they stand and have them stop their nuclear, testing and whatever. And then and he went from country to country to country on all these wars that we had to wage, to put the world back together again. And I said, if we did what this guy said, we would be perennially at war and most likely have a nuclear war as a result of all of this. I mean, why would not the answer be what my mother says? Stay home, mind your own business, everything's a better place, let them do what they want to do. North Korea is 2/3 the size of the state of Oklahoma. I mean, could you imagine a country smaller than the state of Oklahoma challenging the United States militarily? It's insane. Why doesn't anyone say that?
Yeah, we just did a show on Korea, and the fact of the matter is, in South Korea, they elected a president who wants to return to the policy of dialogue with North Korea. He wants to. He actually just welcomed the North Korean Taekwondo team to compete in the South Korean World Championships. He's talking about a unified Korean team for the Olympics. These are the kinds of diplomacy that are easy, but they start bringing people together. The Koreans want to get back together. It's just that we're standing in the way. We demand to be in the middle of it, and that's the problem.
Yeah, but why do we care if North Korea has missiles that can reach the United States and they have atomic warheads? What difference does it make? Because we can knock it out of the sky. We have submarines all over the place, or, aircraft carriers that have rockets on them and stuff can knock other rockets out of the air anytime. And if they'd be stupid enough, insane enough to launch missiles to the United States, I mean, we could not launch more than one missile because one hydrogen bomb would destroy the entire country. Unfortunately, it would take half of South Korea with it, including Seoul. Yeah. I mean, it's all insane. No one's saying anything, and if you listen to the mainstream television, you don't get any of this. You don't get any statistics, any size, the size of the country, the ramifications, the idiocy of the whole thing. All you hear is what they want you to hear is we have to do something. We have to be more aggressive.
Bad.
Yeah. Well, let's get on to really fun stuff now. We have a few minutes left. Healthcare. Now, these Republican clowns, and they're a bunch of clowns, every one of them except for maybe Rand Paul and a couple others, but put together a package and presented it a couple of years ago to Barack Obama, the president at the time, and said, here's a proposal to do away with Obamacare altogether, not replace, do away with Obamacare. And they signed off on it. They had, and of course, they did it because they knew Obama would reject it, and he rejected it, and that was the end of that. When Trump came into office, why didn't they hand that same package to Trump and say, hey, now that you're a Republican, we have repeal of Obamacare. We don't need to replace it. We can bring it back to the free market system, something that I don't think he understands. Sign it, would have been all over. What happened there?
Yeah, it's an amazing phenomenon to see Washington because theoretically having a Republican in the presidency and controlling both houses of Congress, it should be as you say, it should be a slam dunk. But the Republicans in Congress have gotten so far off track over this Russiagate stuff. They're obsessed with it. They feel ambivalent about it because on the one hand, they've been trained to see anyone else as the enemy. On the other hand, they have a Republican president, but they can't seem to get anything done because they can't put this stuff aside and just say this is BS. Let's move on and take care of something. Let's work on tax reform. Let's work on getting rid of Obamacare, which is what the president ran on. Congress, if anything, has gotten far, far worse with, as you point out, a couple of exceptions. And I would put Thomas Massie in that group as well, probably the finest member of Congress right now. But, there's no leadership. No one's leading. There's no leadership on the Democrat side either.
Yeah.
It's all Russia. Let's hope this is starting to die down, but up until this point, it's a mess.
Yeah. Where do you see the economy going? Do you have any flavor for that?
Well, I don't know, and I'm not an economist, and I'm not an expert. I do know that spending has not slowed, does not slow. The president wanted a $54 billion increase in military spending, and Congress said, no, come on, you want more than that, don't you? And they added, I think, another $30 billion on top of that. So, when you're spending that way, so without I don't see how you can continue this sort of facade that we have.
Yeah, I don't see how we're getting out of this. We're digging the hole deeper. And it seems that the answer the Republicans have to every crisis is let's go to war. Maybe people will forget about it. They'll allow us to spend the money that we don't have. They'll allow their standard of living to go down because they're being protected by our military. And I could be just talking just hot air right now, but there's nothing else that makes any sense to me. It seems that you never hear, the Republicans always talk about the Constitution, this and that, they're conservative, but you never hear the word Constitution, you never hear the words free market, you never hear the words free enterprise, you never hear those words when they're talking. They're always talking about legislation. Now, what happens to these clowns that are supposed to be entrepreneurs and, free market guys, but they never use those words when they're talking about legislation?
Yeah, well, they're sucked into the Washington bubble, and once they get there, it's very exciting to be so important and such a big part of it, to be able to park your car wherever you want and it'll never get towed. Yeah. That doesn't happen anywhere else in the country unless, I guess, if you're a mega Hollywood star or something. But that's probably the equivalent of being a Hollywood star. And, hey, don't rock the boat. If you want to be in leadership, you got to learn how to follow. Yeah. And that really is the rule of the game there.
Yeah. You have any flavor as to what the outcome of this nationalized health care? You think they're just going? It's really purposeful what they're doing, so they can say, well, let's go to universal health care. That'll solve all the problems. We won't have all this legislation. All health care is, quote, free, but you'll be pay through it on your taxes, and then we'll solve all those problems and be just like all the other countries in Europe.
Yeah, that's right. We're exceptional except for this. So no, but you're right. And I think the left, part of the left secretly has always wanted Obamacare to fail. And that's, because they want to have the single payer. But, places like Oklahoma, there are some very exciting things going on in private health care. There are, and I'm sure you know more about it than I do. There are some sort of faith-based co-ops that are getting together and pooling resources.
Right.
So if the market were allowed to, it would start to develop alternatives that would bring down the cost and let us, actually pay for our own. The idea that you have insurance to pay for a doctor's checkup, it's just, you think about it, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's like getting auto insurance to change your oil.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and we always play the same stupid game, the same record, But what about the poor people? They can't afford it. Well, they couldn't afford it before we had health care, and they got health care. They always got health care. No one ever died in the street because they had no health care. But no one wants to bring that up. And health care, I have plenty of doctors on my program. We talk about this. And I did my own analysis of a major operation that I had about 3-4 years ago. And I took and I have insurance, not only Medicare, because I'm old and decrepit, but I also have insurance from a company that I work for, international company, so I have good insurance from them. And I just took the amount of money that was the leftover, whatever you call it, after the deductibles and the whole bit, my portion. And copay, thank you. And I added all that up and got the total amount and whatever, and I gave them these figures. I don't recall what they were, but they were substantial numbers. And then I said, well, this is how much I paid. It seems that I paid about 1/10 of the total amount. And I said, if we had, and then I called a cash-only hospital. Cash only. You go in there, you say how much for this, you pay them, it's all paid for, right? And guess how much that was? It was almost the exact amount that I paid in copay. I'm not kidding you. And you know what the doctor's response were? You would have been overcharged. And I'm not kidding you. They said, "Oh no, you would have been overcharged. We can do it for less than that." I thought they would laugh at me when I said that. They say, "No, your figures are wrong." My figures were wrong. I was paying too much. and yet we have these, and I'm sure they know that, but no one wants. Why doesn't anyone want to admit it? Why doesn't anyone why don't you ever hear free enterprise on from these clowns?
Yeah, the same thing is true with higher education. When back in the dark ages, when I went to college, I had a job, I worked, and I paid for it. I went to a state school, and it was manageable. Now I just heard some family member who's going to a school, he's taking out $40,000 in loans just per year to get a degree that's probably not going to pay much more than that. It's just unbelievable. The government involvement in higher education with student loans, making them so readily available, has just shot the tuition and everything so far through the roof that is astonishing. People don't understand. I mean, if the government were involved in cell phones, it'd be about $20,000 each. It's a free market that brings prices down. Of course, I don't need to tell you this, Joe. You know better than I do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it sure seems that the government brings prices up, and this is not a one-time deal. This occurred hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times over. When do we learn? Does it have to go up to $1 million to $1 million to 1 before we say, hey, this is kind of expensive? I mean, nothing's expensive when the government's paying for it, and all we do is create debt. We're getting to the point where we can't create that much more debt without devaluing the currency. And once we devalue the currency, Other countries will not accept it as the world's reserve currency. Ball game's over. Jim Ricketts talks about this all the time, about how we may lose the reserve currency status to maybe SDRs or the World Bank or something like that, and at which case all these trillions of dollars around the world that are held in central banks in order to conduct international trade will come back to us. And they say, enjoy your $45 loaf of bread.
Yeah, breaking up the wheelbarrows,
that's
Weimar,
right.
Germany.
Yeah, my problem right now is that I don't see anyone taking any path that's leading us out of this malaise that we're in. Everything that I see done, all major things that's being done, seems to be exasperating the bad position that we're in. And either I'm a raving lunatic, which I really think I am at this point, but and everyone is sane, and I should seek mental health. I don't see it.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me like you made a comment earlier that really struck me, is the lack of the use of the word free markets, and I think the left has somehow been successful in carving that out of the mentality of the right, of conservatives. And we libertarians embrace that across all platforms, but I think we've lost our allies on the right when it comes to faith in markets, and I think that might be a fundamental shift in the way things are going to play out.
Yeah, I was at Starbucks the other day. I was talking to this guy. I never met him before, but I had my dogs with me. He was petting my dogs, and we were talking this and that, and we start talking about, I don't know how we got into the conversation, but about government policy and all this, and he says, well, yeah, he says, we really have problems here. He says, but the only good policy we have is Social Security. I said, oh, then you're a socialist. He says, no, I'm not. I said, but you like Social Security? He said, no, I don't. I said, yes, I do, but I'm not a socialist. I said, well, that's socialism. He says, no, it's not. I mean, he couldn't put the pieces together. He was a bright guy, by the way. He wasn't stupid. I mean, you can tell by the way he was speaking and everything. He wasn't stupid, But they can't put these pieces together. They can't see something that is beneficial, it appears beneficial, can be very harmful long-term to the entire population. They cannot see that at all. They see goodness when someone gets something from the government. I see no goodness at all. And yet I'm a recipient of Social Security. I'm making out like a bandit on it at your expense, I hate to tell you, But I mean, that's the ballgame. I can't get out of it. I mean, I'd get out of it if I could.
Well, people, if it was truly beneficial, there wouldn't need to be coercion to get you to be involved in it, Right. But you're right, the idea, and there still is the idea that, hey, I paid into it, I need to get out of it what I paid in, but that's not the way that's not the way the books are balanced, is it?
Yeah, no. How does Ron Paul keep his sanity?
He works very, very hard, I have to say. He exercises very hard, and he works very hard. We do about a 20-minute show every day, 5 days a week, and when I come into the studio, he's already, and I think I'm exhausted. I've done so much reading this morning to prepare for the show. It turns out he's done about 5 times more than I have, and he'll always have some article that I hadn't seen. Did you see this? No, I haven't seen it. So, he works harder than ever. It's amazing. It's an inspiration, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm a club member. I pay my $9.95 a month for the Ron Paul channel. Was it Ron Paul channel or whatever it is? It comes out of my account every month. I pay $9.95 and I get access to all that stuff, and I enjoy listening to it. Well, looks like we're at the witching hour right now. But I don't want to forget, before we sign off, I would like for you to do me a favor. Would you give my regards to Dr. Paul, please? Say, Joe Cristiano, Liberty Talk Radio says hello. He misses you, okay, or something like that, okay?
Will do.
I'll leave you with the last minute to close things out.
Okay, well, thanks so much for having me on. We're at ronpaulinstitute.org. We have a big conference coming up in September in Washington, D.C. We had a sold-out conference last year. This one is going to be even bigger and better. Get on the website and find out more information about it, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Daniel. Appreciate it very much. I hope you'll accept that invitation to return at a later date.
Would love to. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, as my wife would say, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. One takes a lot of effort, you know. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.